What is the craziest real-life plot twist story you have? The 2007 Pepsi 400 at Daytona International Speedway. The date was the 7th of July, the 7th of July 2007, and every commentator in NASCAR's Premier Series was speculating that Clint Bowyer, driver of the number 07 Jack Daniels Chevrolet, was destined to win, based purely on numeric superstition. At the end of the race, Bowyer did not win, however he did finish 7th. When I was 5 years old, I remember going to a wedding reception for one of my friend's older sisters. I vaguely remember that it was scandalous that she was young, 18, just graduated HS, and he was much older. That's all I knew, and it didn't come up much in conversation with my friend or their family. 10 years later, I'm in high school on the debate team, just chatting with the coach about random stuff. When we get to talking about the team before he was coach, he told me that before him, another teacher was the coach, who got kicked out for having a relationship with one of the students on the team. He told me the names and my jaw hit the floor. That was the wedding reception I was at. First roommate in college was super Catholic and did not approve of my older BF. As an attempt to save me, she thought of inviting me to her friend's celibacy celebration while I was doing homework in the commons. A chill wind picked up, and I sensed it was time for me to leave. As I turned around, I saw the only doorway blocked by a circle of people, holding hands and quietly chanting, "No sex until 30, no sex until 30. As I approached to try to break through the circle, and GTFO, their chanting got louder. I eventually got out, but this chick threw away all of my high-end sex toys and S-girl book. I was done with living with her, and got out after just a quarter. Over a year later, a few friends and I were comparing horror stories about roommates we have had, and I shared my story. A new friend told hers about a super noisily masturbating lesbian. None of the others had much to say, so they voted between the two. Mine won by a small margin, only to find out both of our stories were about the same roommate, just 1 year apart. Oh, also, she did not throw out my sex toys or my S-girl book. I was best friends with a neighbor kid growing up. He was always over at my house or I was at his, and I had a major crush on him pretty much since I was old enough to walk. But it never seemed like he liked me back or that he even noticed that I liked him, so we grew up. He started dating people and I was jealous as F over it. I started dating people while still pining over him. I figure he just sees me as a little kid. I was a year younger than him, or a little sister, and nothing will ever come out of it, so I try to put my feelings aside. Then when he turned 16, his family moved out of state and we lost contact. I got over my feelings and time moved on. Fast forward a few years later and we reconnect online, start talking, and then this dude casually mentions in a conversation about how he had a giant crush on me growing up and always wanted to ask me out. He tells me that he even asked my mother for permission to ask me out, and she said no, so he never ended up doing it. My mom never told me about this at all. My mind is blown. My entire childhood of pining after this guy, my first ever crush, feels like a lie. At this point I'd long since put aside the feelings I had for him and kinda gotten over the crush, but I still felt a lot of residual nostalgia from being 15 and craving D for the first time in my life. He was still into me, and I was debating whether I wanted to start something with him or not, mostly so I wouldn't have to live with the what if of it all. Tossing the idea around while we kept in touch. Then suddenly he stops messaging me. I'm like, because our talking was going well, and I didn't think I did anything to make him want to start ghosting me. I message a mutual friend of ours and ask if she knows what's up, and she tells me the guy was arrested for beating a dude who owed him money to death. He's in prison right now serving a life sentence. I never got that to the end. The husband of an elderly couple near me died about a year ago. The wife, for most of her adult life, had a pretty serious drinking habit, and her husband kept her on track. A month or two after his death, she found someone new off the internet. He quickly moved in, but something wasn't right about him. He'd often be seen buying multiple bottles of vodka and whiskey and taking them home with him. He was doing this every 1-2 days. Anyway, soon after the police came asking people in the local area to see if anyone had seen the elderly woman and her new partner, as they believed they had recently got married. This could be because if she was to die, her nice house would be left to him now. He kept buying alcohol for presumably her, until 2 police vans, an ambulance and crime scene investigators were seen outside the house. No one has been seen in or around the house since. At first I thought he was trying to kill this poor woman off through her drinking habit, but got fed up and tried to murder her so he could have the house. But according to neighbors, she killed him to stop the apparent abuse he'd been putting her through. She is apparently in a secure unit now, where she will most likely stay. I heard there was this couple who could not conceive kids, but their neighbor had like 3. They couldn't afford artificial insemination, so the guy approaches his neighbor and asks him to impregnate his wife, because they really wanted a kid. The neighbor obliges. For months no pregnancy. Finally the neighbor's wife admits to the guy she cheated on him to get pregnant. Ended up the neighbor was firing blanks. So afterwards, this guy who wanted his wife to get pregnant ended up suing the neighbor for breach of contract. I am not sure what happened after that. I used to have a friend named Tiffany in middle school. I wasn't so good with people, and I was a little rough around the edges. I was very jealous because she was incredibly dainty and feminine, while I was a begrudging tomboy. In middle school, her very sketchy and violent father withdrew her from classes, and we lost contact. She was homeschooled for a while, and then she and her mother escaped to a battered women's shelter and set up a new life in Kentucky. I learned all this from the grapevine. I found her mother, brothers, aunts and uncles on Facebook. So why couldn't I find her? Over the course of 2 years, I searched every few months for her online, desperate to reconnect and apologize to the friend I had such intense jealousy for, and explain that I was unintentionally rude, because I envied how feminine she was, while I felt like a brick wall of a girl. Finally, one day, her mother replied to my friend request, and I found out the reason that I never could find her name on Facebook. He goes by TJ now. TLDR. Old friends reconnect. Ace Ventura pet detective moment ensues. My boyfriend was pressuring me to have a threesome with a woman I kind of knew. I had never done anything with a woman before, or had any attraction at all to one, and I ended up not going through with it. He kept encouraging me to spend time with her, to get more comfortable with the idea, so I did. Then I left him for her. Not a plot twist per se, but I met a guy online a few years ago and we started hanging out and became good friends. In 2016, he got a Facebook message from a young man telling him that he was his father. He gave his mother's name and sure enough my friend had slept with her a few times around when he would have been conceived. He showed me the young guy's Facebook page and there was a picture of his mother who looked very familiar to me. I looked at her profile and sure enough, it was my best friend from high school older sister. She had a kid when she was 16, and he lived with my best friend for a couple of years, and I would babysit him quite a bit. I have about half a dozen photos of me with him when he was a baby. Plot twist. My mom's second husband, whom she swore had died in a car accident, was actually still alive and living in Africa. I talked to his brother on the phone after randomly finding his name in a list of numbers while I was working as a scam telemarketer. My life is insane. Coworker breaks up with bartender and starts pursuing me. Tells me the ex has been stalking him and won't leave him alone. He makes a point to publicly call out bartender at work for being weird, tells her to leave him alone. We start dating, and things are cool for a few weeks. Then, he invites me over for a small party and oddly enough, the ex is there, so I keep my distance from both of them, as I have no idea what the hell is happening. A few hours in, the ex changes into pajamas, and I realize he got back together with her at some point, and never told me. The next day at work, I find out he told everyone that I tried to seduce him, make him cheat on the bartender. They all believed him, and treated me like garbage for months after that. His behavior towards me got scarier in and outside of work, and I couldn't tell anyone, because I was the lying boyfriend stealer. I never knew depression before this fiasco. I had a one-night stand when I was 18. Because I was curious, I didn't like it and decided to never bother again. Anyway, I was at a nightclub one night after that and trying to buy a drink at a bar when I happened to look around and saw a guy that looked like the guy I had the one night stand with. In order to check, I snottily asked, "What's your name?" And he answered with a different name. It was a different guy. I ended up marrying him. I have a very close girlfriend. Everybody in college assumed we were a couple. Plot twist number 1. I came out as gay. Plot twist number 2. She came out as a lesbian. 2 years later, none of us had any idea the other was gay before we each left our closet. From my own life, it's a small one but a ridiculous coincidence. 2012, I'm in a bar being chatted up. We're telling funny stories. So I told a long story of how I ended up almost in a fist fight with a minor celebrity in 1999. I didn't know that the woman I'm talking to had done acting as a teenager, and I definitely didn't know that she had played the same minor celebrities on screen. Girlfriend in 1998. One of my buddies was living in a dorm at uni his freshman year. A couple weeks in, his stomach was hurting constantly as soon as he would wake up in the morning, and he decided he should go to the doctor's. The doctor asked him what his daily diet consisted of, and my friend tells him he always drinks a protein shake right before bed. The doctor says to quit drinking the shake before bed and see if that helps. So friend doesn't drink the shake that night and goes to sleep. He wakes up to his roommate trying to take off his pants. It turns out my friend's roommate was putting drugs into his protein shake so he could grape him while he was out. The drugs are what was upsetting his stomach. I know someone in the healthcare field. She told me a story about how a woman tested positive for an STD, and my friend suggests that she bring her partner in to be tested as well. The next day the lady comes in and brings her boyfriend to be tested. Then the lady tells my friend to wait a minute, and this younger male walks in. She said, couldn't be more than 15, and hands the lady what appears to be keys. He then hugs the boyfriend. My friend thinks he was in the car and needs to have parking validated. She said it happens more often than you think. Nope, the kid was there to get tested as well for sleeping with his dad's GF. Friend had to report it. Don't know what came of it, but that's some weird shit. I've grown up hearing about my Cherokee ancestry from my dad's side of the very southern family. One of my cousins has gone on a spirit journey and has spent a good amount of time researching his Cherokee heritage and connecting to our familial roots. The 2-minute version of the family story tells how a patriarch of my family met the woman of his dreams and moved out into the forest to live like a true Cherokee father would. He left the rest of our family behind. Several years ago, my grandmas got very into Ancestry.com. As they researched our tree, they found that we actually have no Cherokee blood. However, my great-great-great-grandma was a black woman. I think that's enough greats. It makes me so happy to think about my racist uncles and extended family, finding out that we are 0% Cherokee and that my generation is 1/16 black. The further you go up my family line and the more racist my family, the more black we are. I love it. I taunted my little sister her entire life about the fact that she looked nothing like me and our dad. I always made "you're adopted" jokes about her and stuff. It became an inside joke between us. I'd tell her we found her on the doorstep and she'd say, "Thank God. That means I'm not actually related to you." My parents kind of frowned at it because it was mean, but my sister could take a joke and she knew I was just teasing her. She joked about it herself. Found out a couple years ago that she was the product of a short-lived affair. My dad accepted her as his own, and my parents kept it a secret from everyone. They told her last year. I still make maybe you're adopted jokes about her, but they're 100 more funnier now. I dated someone last year for a couple of months, and things were pretty good between us. One day, he grew cold and distant from me, out of the blue, and I thought I had done something wrong. Next thing I know, he uploads a picture on Facebook of him kissing a woman. They had been together ever since. When I was 15, I started dating my male friend after he asked me out. We have been fairly close for a long time, and a lot of our friends said we should get together, so it kind of felt inevitable. He ended up breaking up with me after a few months, and I was sad for a while, but we stayed friends, so in the end it was all chill. However, whilst we had been together, we were never really affectionate in public, or at all, which was down to my insane anxiety, and a rumor started that we were each other's beards. That is, we were both gay, but pretending to date each other to cover it up. Laughed it off at the time, because I knew I was straight, but goddamn, if it isn't 3 years later, and he's got a boyfriend, and I'm away from home, lusting after uni girls. Well played. Rumor mill, you called it. My dad was adopted as a baby, because his parents were both teens from Catholic families. They were promptly sent to boarding schools across the country from each other, and that was that. Many years later, my dad was researching his genetics to look for potential hereditary health problems, and decided to put out a search for his parents. He eventually contacted and met with them separately, but both his mom and dad also got in contact with each other. As it turns out, they both had grown kids and deceased spouses, so they decided to meet up and eventually started dating. About 5 years ago, my brother and I went with my dad to a family reunion where we discovered his parents were once again in love and had invited both of their families to my grandpa's farm for a big weekend party. I met close to 100 people I was somehow related to, including dozens of cousins and several aunts and uncles. It was all thanks to my dad that these two huge families came together and made new connections, so he, along with my brother and I, were treated like celebrities all weekend, and everyone wanted to get to know us. My dad's adoptive mother died over a year ago, but now he has two new parents who are relatively young and extremely interesting people for him and my family to spend time with. We go skiing at my grandpa's condo in Montana and enjoy summer activities at his huge farm property in Alberta. The whole experience taught me that you're never too old for a new love, and I am happy to be able to have grandparents for many more years to come. My girlfriend of 2 years moved a couple hours away to go to school. We saw each other most weekends. The weekend before Valentine's Day, we were together and it was great. The next weekend, on V-Day, I go to see her at her parents' home. I see through the window as I walk up to the house, her and her fiancé are showing her parents an engagement ring. Edit. Additional plot twist, as listed in below comments. They got married, and after 6 years, she discovered his other wife and kids. He must have been a sweet talker, alright. Thank you all for the concern. This was 26 years ago. I'm doing fine. My boyfriend of 2 years broke up with me and I was pretty upset, but I got asked out on a date and said yes, thinking I was ready. I was wrong. I had a miserable time. Couldn't hit it off with this guy, even though he was trying. Anyway, he took me to a concert on the other side of the city, an area I'm not familiar with and never go to. On the way home, I'm feeling sad and text my ex, which was lame, but I did it. My date thinks something is wrong with one of his back tires and pulls over into an apartment complex. It's 1 AM, dark, and I take little notice. While he's outside fiddling with the tire, I get a text back from my ex, basically telling me he wished he had never met me and to leave him alone. At this point I'm trying not to cry and realize how big of a mistake it was to go out that night, and in general just feeling depressed AF, thinking I'll never be happy again. I tell date guy, I'm sorry but I'm not ready to be in a relationship again. The night ends. Cut to 2 months later, I finally feel like I'm moving on and try online dating. I hit it off with a guy I'm talking to. We meet up and have a great time. Start dating. The first time he brings me back to his place. It's nighttime. I'm looking around the outside of the apartment complex and can't shake the familiar feeling. I had been there before, which didn't make sense, because this was 45 minutes from where I lived, and not an area I ever went to. On the second night, we leave, using the back gate, and it hits me. This was the same apartment complex the guy had pulled off into earlier on that date. I go, oh my god. I almost had an emotional breakdown right here. Long story short, I married the new guy and we have been together 10 years now. I know it's just a coincidence, but I find it crazy that of all the apartments in Houston, we stopped at the one my future husband lived at. He was literally feet away from me while I was in a car, having one of the lowest moments in my life and feeling like I would never find someone again. We were at a college fundraising event and our friend, Dum, was desperately and obnoxiously hitting on any female in sight. During that time, including me, but anyways, there was one girl in a hat who started hanging by our group's table to prevent Dom from coming on strong on hat girl, and so she didn't feel uncomfortable by Dom. My friend told him she was gay. Dom left her alone. Fast forward a few days, and friends, including Dom, are sitting at lunch when hat girl comes and starts talking to one of the girls at our table, and somewhere along the lines, hat girl said to female friend, "Stop it, you know I'm gay." We had no idea she was actually gay, so we were dying when that happened. Working in a pub, one of the regulars always talks about his filthy girlfriend. He consistently details his sex life to me and some of the regulars, filled with exhibitionism and dogging. One day he calls me over. "Hey Bailey," he says, "have a butcher's at this, pal." Intrigued, I look at his phone, which he is holding in front of him, but close to his person, as he's turned sideways leaning on the bar, clearly about to show something that can't be widely shared. I look, pictures and a video of his filthy girlfriend doing all sorts. Turns out, it was one of my close friend's mother. Safe to say I didn't look at her the same, but she was hot, so I mentally took screenshots and stored them in the spank bank for later. Not the craziest, but from the top of my head, this one always stands out for shock value. I'm a brown dude. When I was going to college, both of my roommates were Chinese American. Once, one of my roommate's high school friends, another brown dude, was visiting. He came to our room and asked which one of us was the third roommate with a Chinese last name, since he'd heard a lot about him. I felt like trolling, so I said I was. He says, "But you don't look Chinese." And I just claimed I was half. Plot twist. This dude spits out fluent Mandarin at me, obviously excited to see another brown guy that can supposedly speak Mandarin. I was flabbergasted. I didn't expect my troll to fail so quickly. Needless to say, he outed me fast and we all had a good laugh. Double plot twist. I'm learning Mandarin now. XD. Moved across the county in June 2013. Still kept in regular contact with my family, mostly mom, on the phone or Skyping or whatever. Everything seemed normal, nothing big going on. Got a call from my brother, who still lived at home, in March 2014. Turns out that almost the whole time I'd been gone, my mom had been talking to a couple different guys behind my dad's back, and was leaving that day to go stay with the one she wound up with. No one ever mentioned any kind of marital problems to me. I still talk to everyone from time to time, but my brother hasn't talked to my mom since. Even extended family got a little shook up by it, from what I've heard, and things just aren't the same. It's very minor, but it's something my friends and I all laugh about. We're all Catholic, just for reference. I'm in a room with a bunch of friends, and we're supposed to be productive, but that never happens. All the boys are causing a huge ruckus, even knocked down a few tables, while us girls were quietly playing card games in the back. We shared the building with a bunch of secretaries and nuns, who absolutely despised us, and would do everything possible to get us kicked out of the building. So a few minutes after table number 2 gets toppled, the girls are all warning the boys that we'll all get in trouble if they don't quit it. Well, barely moments after that, one of the secretaries walks in the room, looks at the loudest boy dead in the eye, points and says quietly, "When you have a moment, come meet me in my office." Well, now we're all panicking, fearing that the boy just got us kicked out of the building, and we really needed that building, since it was the only one that could accommodate us for free. With fear radiating from his entire body, he leaves to go to the office. After 10 minutes or so, some younger kids walk in our room, where we're still panicking, and tell us the boy was on the phone with his parents, and it sounded serious. This just sends us into an even bigger frenzy. Finally, the boy returns to our room, holding a bright pink slip. At first, he looks traumatized, and we're all begging him to tell us what happened. He grins widely and says, "She asked me to serve a mass tomorrow.